They think I'm just a doddering old fool. At 83, with my silver hair pinned back in a careful bun and my reading glasses perched on my nose, I suppose I look the part. But appearances, as I've learned over 8 decades, can be devastatingly deceiving. My name is Margaret Thornfield, and I built a fortune from nothing, starting with a small bookkeeping business in my garage and growing it into a multi-million-dollar financial consulting firm. Now, as I sit in the sunroom of my sprawling estate, watching my family through the French doors, I can see the hunger in their eyes. They circle like vultures, waiting for me to weaken, to stumble, to finally give them what they believe is rightfully theirs. They have no idea what's coming. It started 3 months ago with my grandson, Tyler. 28 years old, handsome in that careless way that comes with privilege, and utterly without moral fiber. He'd always been my daughter Sarah's golden boy, despite his gambling debts and string of failed business ventures. "Grandmother," he said one Tuesday morning, his voice dripping with false concern as he settled into the chair across from my mahogany desk. "I've been thinking about your health lately." I set down my pen and looked at him over my reading glasses. "Have you now? You're getting older and managing all these finances. It must be exhausting." He leaned forward, his blue eyes wide with manufactured sincerity. "I'd like to help. I could take over some of the day-to-day management of your accounts." The audacity was almost admirable. I'd heard through my network that Tyler owed nearly $200,000 to some very unsavory individuals. Men who didn't appreciate late payments. "How thoughtful of you," I murmured. "And what would this help entail exactly?" "Well, I could handle the investment portfolio, pay the bills, manage the trust accounts." He pulled out a folder of documents. "I've already had some paperwork drawn up. Just a simple power of attorney arrangement. Completely revocable, of course." "Of course. Revocable right up until the moment he drained my accounts and disappeared." I pretended to study the documents, my mind racing. The papers were expertly crafted, too expertly for Tyler's limited intellect. Someone else was behind this, pulling the strings. My son-in-law Richard, perhaps. He'd always resented my success, always believed he deserved a larger slice of the family fortune. "This is quite thorough," I said finally. "But I'd like my attorney to review it first." Tyler's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, but time is somewhat of the essence. I've been looking at some investment opportunities that could really benefit the family portfolio, but they won't be available much longer." The pressure tactic. Create urgency to prevent careful consideration. "I understand completely," I said, standing slowly and moving to the window. "You know, Tyler, I've been feeling my age lately. Just yesterday, I nearly fell down the stairs to the wine cellar." I watched his reflection in the glass. His eyes sharpened with interest. "That's exactly what I'm worried about," he said. "What if something happened to you? What if you had an accident?" "Yes," I said softly, "what if?" That afternoon, I called my real attorney, not the one Tyler expected me to use, but the sharp young woman I'd kept secret for situations exactly like this. We worked quickly to set up a trap. 2 days later, Tyler returned with Richard in tow. My son-in-law was a portly man with thinning hair and the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. They found me in my study, seemingly confused and agitated. "Oh, Tyler, Richard, thank goodness you're here," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I've been so overwhelmed. These financial documents, it's all too much." Richard's eyes gleamed. "Margaret, you look pale. Are you feeling all right?" I think I need to sign those papers Tyler showed me. I can't handle all this responsibility anymore." They exchanged glances, barely containing their excitement. Tyler produced the documents again, along with a pen. "Just sign here, grandmother. We'll take care of everything." I took the pen with shaking hands and slowly signed my name. What they didn't realize was that I was signing a completely different set of documents, ones my attorney had prepared that would appear identical to theirs until subjected to legal scrutiny. The real power of attorney papers I'd substituted gave Tyler authority over a single account containing exactly $1,000. "There," I said, handing back the pen. "It's done." They stayed for tea, probably to ensure I didn't have a sudden change of heart. As they left, I heard Tyler whisper to Richard, "She's losing it faster than we thought." The next morning, I received a call from my bank. Tyler had attempted to transfer $800,000 from my primary investment account. When the bank blocked the transfer due to insufficient authority, he'd become belligerent, demanding to speak to the manager and threatening legal action. By noon, he was at my door, his face flushed with anger and confusion. "Grandmother, there seems to be some mistake with the paperwork." The bank says. "The bank says what, dear?" I asked innocently. "They say I only have authority over a single account with $1,000. But that can't be right." I smiled and pulled out the real documents, their documents. "Oh my, Tyler. It seems you've been trying to steal from me. How disappointing." His face went white. No, that's not. There must be some mistake." "The only mistake," I said, my voice dropping its tremulous quality, "was underestimating me. You have 24 hours to pay back the $1,000 you already withdrew, plus interest, or I'll be filing charges for attempted fraud and forgery." Tyler left without another word. But I knew this was far from over. The second attempt came 6 weeks later, orchestrated by my daughter Sarah. At 55, she was still beautiful, but there was a hardness around her eyes that spoke of disappointed dreams and accumulated resentments. I was returning from my weekly bridge game when I noticed the BMW parked in my driveway. Through the window, I could see Sarah speaking animatedly on her phone. She ended the call as I approached. "Mother, we need to talk." Inside, she sat rigidly on the edge of my sofa, her hands folded in her lap. "I've been speaking with Dr. Morrison." Dr. Morrison was my longtime physician, a man I'd trusted for nearly 2 decades. The mention of his name in this context sent a chill down my spine. "Oh." I kept my voice level. "He's concerned about your cognitive state. He mentioned some irregularities in your recent visits." This was news to me. My last checkup had gone perfectly well. "What kind of irregularities?" Sarah's expression was a masterpiece of feigned concern. "Memory lapses. Confusion about dates and places. He thinks you might be showing early signs of dementia." I sat down heavily in my chair, my mind racing. That's impossible. "I feel fine." "That's the thing about cognitive decline, Mother. The patient is often the last to recognize it." She leaned forward, taking my hand. "Dr. Morrison thinks we need to start planning for your care. There are some wonderful facilities." Facilities? Assisted living communities. Places where you'd be safe, where trained professionals could monitor your condition. And where my family would have convenient access to my finances while I was safely tucked away, no doubt. But the cost. That's what I wanted to discuss. "We need to liquidate some assets, restructure your insurance policies." Dr. Morrison has recommended a care coordinator who specializes in these situations. Her name is Janet Walsh. I'd never heard of Janet Walsh, but I was certain she was in on whatever scheme they were hatching. "This is all so sudden," I said weakly. "I know it's frightening, but we have to be proactive. I've already scheduled a follow-up appointment with Dr. Morrison for tomorrow. The care coordinator will meet us there." That night, I made some phone calls. My real physician, not Dr. Morrison, whom I'd stopped seeing months ago after discovering his gambling problem, assured me that my cognitive function was excellent. A private investigator I'd used for business purposes provided some interesting information about Janet Walsh. She was currently under investigation for insurance fraud in 3 states. The next morning, I played my part perfectly. I dressed in my most conservative outfit, styled my hair in a deliberately dated way, and practiced looking confused and frail. At the medical office, I met the fake Dr. Morrison, a man I'd never seen before in my life, though he greeted me like an old friend. Janet Walsh was a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit who spoke to me in the condescending tone people use with small children. "Mrs. Thornfield, we're all here because we care about your well-being," she said. "I understand this is difficult, but we need to discuss your care options." They showed me brochures for luxury, assisted living facilities, places that would cost $15,000 a month. They explained how my life insurance policies could be restructured to provide immediate cash flow. They painted a picture of inevitable decline and dependency. Through it all, I nodded and asked simple questions, letting them believe they had me cornered. Finally, Janet Walsh produced a stack of documents. These will authorize the necessary financial arrangements for your care. Don't worry about the details, we'll handle everything. I took the papers with trembling hands. I'm so confused. This is all happening so fast. I know, Mother, Sarah said soothingly. But we're doing this because we love you. I was about to sign when inspiration struck. Wait, I said, my voice suddenly clearer. Sarah, dear, could you call Tyler? I'd like him to witness this. After all, he is family. Sarah's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Tyler's busy today, Mother. Oh, but I insist. Family should be together for important decisions like this. I could see the wheels turning in her head. Calling Tyler would delay the signing, possibly giving me time to reconsider. But refusing would seem suspicious. Of course, she said through gritted teeth. While we waited, I excused myself to use the restroom. Instead, I slipped into an empty office and made a quick call to the State Insurance Commission. By the time Tyler arrived, looking harried and nervous, investigators were already on their way. When the insurance investigators walked into that office 20 minutes later, Janet Walsh went white as paper. The fake Dr. Morrison simply bolted, leaving behind a briefcase full of forged medical documents. Sarah tried to maintain her innocence, claiming she'd been deceived along with me. But the investigators found text messages on Janet Walsh's phone detailing the entire scheme, including Sarah's promise of a $50,000 finder's fee once I was safely institutionalized. As the handcuffs clicked around Sarah's wrists, she looked at me with pure hatred. You always were a manipulative bitch. I learned from the best, I replied calmly. The third and most elaborate scheme emerged 2 months later, orchestrated by my son Michael. At 58, he was the family member I'd trusted most, which made his betrayal cut deepest. Michael had always been the responsible one, the steady son who'd built his own successful law practice. When he called to suggest dinner at our old family restaurant, I thought perhaps he wanted to make amends for his siblings' behavior. I should have known better. We met at Francesca's, a quaint Italian place where I'd celebrated family milestones for decades. Michael was already seated when I arrived, and he rose to kiss my cheek with what seemed like genuine affection. Mother, you look wonderful. How are you holding up after all this business with Sarah and Tyler? It's been difficult, I admitted. I never imagined my own children could be so desperate, he finished. They made poor choices, but I hope you won't judge the whole family based on their mistakes. Over wine and pasta, we talked about safer topics, his practice, his daughter's college plans, memories of his father. It felt almost normal, and I found myself relaxing despite my better instincts. It wasn't until dessert that the other shoe dropped. Mother, I need to tell you something, Michael said, his expression growing serious. There's been some concerning activity in your accounts. My blood chilled. What kind of activity? Unusual transactions. Large transfers to accounts in offshore banks. Someone appears to be embezzling from your estate. I set down my fork carefully. How do you know about my accounts? As your son, I've been monitoring things informally, especially after Tyler and Sarah's indiscretions. I was worried someone else might try to take advantage of you. He pulled out a folder of bank statements and transaction records. The documents looked authentic, showing a pattern of suspicious transfers over the past 6 months. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had allegedly been moved to accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. This is impossible, I said, studying the papers. I haven't authorized any of these transactions. That's what concerns me. Either someone has gained unauthorized access to your accounts, or he trailed off diplomatically. Or what? Or you're making these transactions and don't remember them. Mother, I know this is hard to hear, but given Sarah's concerns about your cognitive state. Sarah was trying to defraud me. Yes, but that doesn't mean her observations were entirely wrong. Michael's voice was gentle but firm. These transactions show a pattern of increasingly erratic financial behavior. Combined with what Dr. Morrison documented, that man wasn't even my real doctor. Michael looked startled. What do you mean? I realized I'd said too much. If Michael was behind the scheme, I'd just revealed that I'd uncovered the previous deception more thoroughly than anyone knew. I mean I stopped seeing Dr. Morrison months ago. I've been seeing Dr. Elizabeth Chin instead. Michael nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Chen is excellent. Have you discussed these memory concerns with her? I don't have memory problems. Mother, please. Getting angry won't solve anything. We need to address this situation before any more money disappears. He outlined his proposed solution with the calm efficiency of a seasoned attorney. We would freeze all my accounts pending an investigation. He would obtain temporary conservatorship over my finances to prevent further theft. A forensic accountant would trace the missing funds and hopefully recover them. It was a perfect plan except for one thing. I knew those bank statements were forgeries, which meant Michael had gone to considerable expense and effort to manufacture this crisis. I need time to think about this, I said. Time is the one thing we don't have. Every day we delay, more money could disappear. As we left the restaurant, Michael's solicitousness felt smothering. He insisted on walking me to my car, on following me home to make sure I arrived safely. I agreed, but inside I was calculating furiously. Back at my house, Michael made himself comfortable while I puttered around making tea. What I was actually doing was activating a sophisticated recording system I'd had installed after Tyler's first attempt. Every word spoken in my main living areas was now being captured and transmitted to a secure server. Mother, I've been thinking, Michael said as I served the tea. Perhaps we should call the police tonight. If someone is actively stealing from you. No police, I said quickly. Not yet. I need to understand what's happening first. Michael's eyes sharpened. What do you mean? I mean that in 60 years of handling money, I've never made an unauthorized transfer in my life. My financial discipline is flawless. But if you're experiencing cognitive decline, I stood abruptly, moving to the window. Michael, do you think I'm a fool? Of course not. Then why are you treating me like one? The silence stretched between us. When I turned around, Michael's expression had changed subtly. The concerned sun was gone, replaced by something colder. I don't know what you mean. Those bank statements. They're very good forgeries, but they're still forgeries. The account numbers are wrong. You transposed 2 digits in my primary savings account. Michael went very still. Mother, you're confused. Account number 847-291-6638. You have it listed as 847-291-6836. It's a small mistake, but it proves these documents are fabricated. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost all pretense of warmth. You're sharper than I gave you credit for. Yes, I am. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Michael stood and began pacing. You have to understand, Mother. We're drowning. All of us. Tyler's gambling debts, Sarah's legal fees, my daughter's college tuition. It's crushing us. And you sit here in this mansion, hoarding millions while your family suffers. So you decided to steal from me? I decided to redistribute family wealth more equitably. The euphemism was almost funny. By having me declared incompetent? It would have been painless. A nice facility, round-the-clock care, dignity intact. And the family would finally have access to resources that should have been shared years ago. I walked to my desk and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a small revolver, not loaded, but Michael didn't know that. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. You're going to sit down and tell me everything. Every detail of every scheme you and your siblings have planned. Every accomplice, every forged document, every lie. Michael's eyes fixed on the gun. Mother, put that away. You don't want to do something you'll regret. The only thing I regret is not seeing through your performance sooner. For the next hour, Michael talked. The recording system captured every word as he detailed the intricate conspiracy that had been years in the making. He revealed how they'd researched my routines, identified my vulnerabilities, and recruited outside accomplices. He explained the fake Dr. Morrison scheme, the insurance fraud, and his own plan to have me declared mentally incompetent. What shocked me most was the scope of their ambition. They hadn't been content with just stealing my money, they'd wanted to erase my autonomy entirely. When he finished, I set down the gun. Thank you for being so thorough. You won't turn in your own son. Watch me. The next morning, I made a series of phone calls. By noon, federal agents were knocking on doors across the city. By evening, the local news was running a story about a multi-generational conspiracy to defraud an elderly woman. The evidence was overwhelming. In addition to Michael's recorded confession, my private investigators had uncovered a paper trail stretching back months. Bank accounts, forged documents, communication records, everything needed to build airtight criminal cases against each family member. Tyler was arrested first, charged with attempted wire fraud and identity theft. The fake power of attorney documents bore his fingerprints, and his desperate attempts to access my accounts were thoroughly documented. Sarah was picked up at her lawyer's office, where she was apparently planning yet another scheme involving a fraudulent medical diagnosis. The insurance fraud charges were serious enough to warrant federal prosecution. Michael was the last to be arrested. He maintained his dignity until the handcuffs clicked, then broke down completely, sobbing about his daughter's future and begging me to reconsider. I felt nothing. The trials were swift and decisive. Tyler received 5 years in federal prison. Sarah got 7, with additional charges pending in other states where her insurance fraud accomplices had operated. Michael, as the ringleader, was sentenced to 10 years and ordered to pay restitution he couldn't possibly afford. As the gavel fell on Michael's sentencing, he looked at me across the courtroom. His mouth formed words I couldn't hear, but I could read his lips clearly enough. I'm sorry. Too little, too late. 8 months later, I sit in my sunroom, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The house is quiet now, no more scheming whispers, no more calculating glances, no more family dinners that were really strategy sessions. I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. Solitude, I've discovered, can be a luxury when it's freely chosen rather than imposed by betrayal. The doorbell rings, and I smile as I recognize the voice of my real attorney, Elizabeth Hartwell. She's here for our weekly meeting, during which we review my actual financial situation, which is excellent, and plan my genuine charitable giving. Unlike my family, Elizabeth has never shown the slightest interest in my money beyond her professional fees. She treats me as a sharp-minded businesswoman rather than a doddering old fool. It's refreshing. "Margaret, how are you feeling?" she asks as she settles into her usual chair. "Victorious," I reply, and mean it. We discuss the final details of my revised will. My estate will now be divided among carefully vetted charities, with special emphasis on organizations that support elderly victims of financial abuse. It seems fitting. As Elizabeth gathers her papers to leave, she pauses. "Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How did you know?" "I mean, from the very beginning, how did you see through their deceptions?" I consider the question carefully. "Experience, I suppose. 60 years in business teaches you to recognize when someone is trying to manipulate you. But more than that." I pause, looking out at the garden where my late husband used to tend his roses. They made a fundamental error in judgment. They assumed that, because I'm old, I'm weak. Because I'm their mother, I'm sentimental. Because I'm a woman, I'm emotional rather than rational. Elizabeth nods thoughtfully. "What they never understood," I continue, "is that age brings clarity, not confusion. Motherhood teaches you hard truths about human nature. And being a woman in business for 6 decades? That teaches you to be absolutely ruthless when necessary." After Elizabeth leaves, I return to my sunroom and pour myself a glass of wine, a lovely Bordeaux from my private cellar, the same one Tyler once mentioned casually in conversation. I'd known then that he'd been snooping around my house, cataloging my possessions like a potential inheritance. The wine tastes like victory. My phone buzzes with a text message from my granddaughter Emma, Michael's daughter. She's the only family member who hadn't been involved in the conspiracy, and she's been devastated by her father's crimes. "Grandmother, I know I have no right to ask, but could we meet for coffee? I want to apologize for my family and tell you how proud I am of your strength." I smile as I type my response. "Of course, dear. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Francesca's." Emma, at least, seems to have inherited some integrity. Perhaps not all hope is lost for the Thornfield family name. As the sun sets, painting my windows in brilliant orange and red, I reflect on the past year. My children thought they could outmaneuver me because they saw an elderly woman where I am actually an experienced strategist. They mistook my love for weakness and my trust for gullibility. Their fatal flaw wasn't greed, it was arrogance. They underestimated their target so completely that they never stood a chance. I raise my glass in a toast to the empty room. To Margaret Thornfield, I say aloud, who may be 83 years old, but who is nobody's fool. The house echoes with the sound of my laughter, not bitter, not broken, but strong and clear and absolutely triumphant. They thought they could steal my money, my independence, my dignity. Instead, I took theirs. And at 83 years old, with silver hair and reading glasses perched on my nose, I've never felt more powerful in my entire life. The game is over and I won. Completely.